It's 11:27 p.m. Central, and the rain above this building sounds like gravel poured onto a metal roof. You're tuned to 102.4 FM, low power, patched through old cables and a stubborn heart. This is Lester Holt, speaking from a basement 2 blocks east of the Oklahoma State Capitol, down in a maintenance room with concrete walls that sweat when the storm presses on them. The temperature outside slipped from the high 80s at sunset to something raw and wet that cuts through layers. The air has that smell after you've scrubbed a pan too hard, scorched metal and soap, only now it comes from the streetlights exploding in slow motion as the thunder lines roll over the city. There used to be a hum out there, traffic along I-235, a freight horn on the Santa Fe line, late voices on a patio. Tonight, there's only the hiss of rain and the long, grinding growl of thunder that doesn't stop so much as step aside and return from a different angle. We're on backup power, a diesel unit the station kept for tornado season, and the old automatic transfer switch refused to bite, so we hammered it over with a wrench and a prayer. I'm feeding the transmitter through a line that was last tested when the Thunder were still playing to a full house, and if the needle holds, we'll keep talking until the fuel drum runs dry. If you can hear me in Midwest City, in Edmond, in a motel on Reno Avenue with towels under the door, you're not alone. Breathe. Drink water if you can. We are still here. If you're hearing this, drop your coordinates, or just your city. Let us know who's still alive out there. It started for me 6 nights ago around 2 a.m. when thunder took on a new pitch that wasn't thunder, and the sky north toward Guthrie looked like a black ocean stacked up and balanced on its edge. The radar loops we all grew up trusting turned to static snow. The colors went to white, then to nothing, and the MEDAR stream out of Will Rogers stopped sending between one observation and the next. I had walked out the back of the studio to clear my head after the late block, and the parking lot was glowing. Not bright like a lightning flash. Steady. It was like the rain itself was lit from inside, each drop a wire, every wire connected to a battery we couldn't see. Back inside, the floor monitors went to hash, and I heard the faintest squeal in my fillings, the way old TV sets used to sing. When the first line of these new storms hit, every phone on a desk or in a pocket went off at once, not with the usual IPAW alert tone, but with a sound like a cassette tape chewing itself. Then they died together, screens dark, as the building lights blinked and the generator kicked in and stuck halfway before it caught. The engineer we called Duck, because he always walks fast and low when he's worried, said the surge was not a normal surge. The lightning had volume to it. He meant current you can feel, not amplitude in a speaker. He rubbed his arm and said it felt like ants with tiny steel feet. We all laughed in that way you do when nothing makes sense, and your body wants permission to be scared. I need to tell you what the people outside did, because it matters, and because it will be used later in things we have to decide. Some ran to cars. Some stood under awnings. Some stood in the open with their phones up even as the cell towers went quiet. When the second line blew over us, it pulled the air like someone lifting a blanket and then dropping it flat on your face. I watched from the doorway as a man on a lime scooter froze mid-turn. I swear he glowed for less than a breath, a pale green around his whole body, and when the thunder hit the glow, it crumpled like paper. He slid backward 10 feet without falling. He stood, shook his hands, yelled something at the sky, then ran. That was the last time I saw anyone move freely in the open before the rules changed. The rules changed at dawn. We used to treat lightning like a strike-and-done thing. This is not that. The storms formed a chain, and then a belt, then a wall, A steady conveyor running from Amarillo through us to Fort Smith, and then bending into Arkansas like a spine. You know supercells. We all do here. A hook echo means you check the closet for flashlights. This wasn't supercell rotation carved in one clean signature. This was a field of stacked charge that marched, stalled, and marched again, and every time a house or a car or a human body touched it, that charge crawled along anything that conducted. Door handles arced to palms. Cast iron pans snapped blue in the dark. The rails along the overpass threw off a thin electric mist that lit up like breath when trucks rolled past. At the hospitals, nurses learned new tricks in minutes they didn't have. Rubber mats under the wheels, IV lines routed with loops and clips so they didn't act like antennas, wheelchairs wrapped with duct tape and hope. Then the grid failed in pieces like teeth coming loose. Substations along the northeast side went first. We heard it through the concrete. Low, hard thumps, and then the distant scream of a transformer going liquid. OG and E tried to island circuits, but the current rode along the wet like it had a mind. When the feeds dropped, water plants lost their restart sequence, and the instruments we rely on to tell us that water is safe did a more human thing and just went quiet. There's a theory running through the few government channels that still spit out anything readable, and it's not hiding behind Latin. It says, the storm belt is drawing on a ground charge that built up over weeks of high heat, low soil moisture, and air thick with aerosols from the western fires. The fine dust that made sunsets beautiful turned the sky into a giant resistor. Now lightning doesn't want to ground and go to sleep. It wants to walk. It wants to move sideways along anything wet and metal and full of life. There are other theories, more wild and more tidy, and they come from people with badges and from people with well-earned calluses. A meteorologist I've known for 20 years who stayed anonymous because her badge still opens doors told me the field measurements they grabbed on day 2 showed pulse widths so long you could measure them with a stopwatch. She said storms have personalities, and these ones like to lean on you and wait. A lineman from Norman who came in to use our last working landline whispered between clenched teeth that he'd never seen arcs jump from a wire to a wet wooden pole and then ride that pole down as if the wood had given up being an insulator. He burned both hands and still wanted to go back out because the neighborhood had kids in it and the generators were throwing sparks in garages. Somewhere in Washington, someone wrote the word anomalous on a memo and thought it would help. It doesn't help you boil water or keep a baby warm. It doesn't help me make this transmitter behave. But it might help you understand that this is new, even to those who study the sky for a living. New doesn't mean unbeatable. It means we learn fast or we pay more. We lost the phone networks in stages. First data slowed and apps died, and we relearned how quiet a room can be when no one is staring down. Then voice calls turned to burps and void. Then every tower light that still blinked went black at once when a third line of storms pressed down around noon 2 days ago. The radio bands got crowded. NOAA still bites through on a couple of rebroadcasts if you have a battery set and patience. They loop the same words from a bunker near Tulsa now. They tell us to avoid high ground during active thunder because strikes aren't coming from the tallest point alone. The charge walks where it wants. They tell us to avoid rail lines, fences, drainage, even wet walls. They tell us the usual: shelter inside, unplug when you can, turn off the main breaker, ground what can be grounded, stand on something dry and thick if you must touch anything metal, a book, a rubber mat, a wood slab. They add something new: don't bunch together, spread out. A cluster draws an arc like a name draws gossip. Hospitals learned this the hard way on Tuesday when a hallway full of waiting families got lit up together by a flash that reached through the automatic door rails. No one died there, but no one stood afterward without shaking. This is the part where I say the quiet thing out loud. You may need to choose distance over comfort for a while. Hug when the sky is calm. When it hisses, stand apart. There's a rumor that the siren system was taken over, but that rumor is lazy fear. The sirens failed because their brains are delicate. They were never built to ride a storm that never resets. Same goes for the smart breakers that keep transformers from tipping over. Same goes for the flight computers that let a medevac crew thread a needle between towers in bad weather. A pilot with 30 years said to me that you can be good and still need luck. And the luck got strange. When the sirens did go off on night 1, they did not stop, and some of you shut your windows and pulled pillows over your heads and cried. Not because you are weak, but because we are tuned to respond to that sound, and the body can't stay on red alert for 20 hours. Now, the sirens sit dark, and it's the sky that sings. A low wire hum in your jaw, sometimes a high keening at the edge of hearing that makes the dog hide and the hair on your arms lift. I wish I could hand you a switch and let you take that down to 0. This is a thunderstorm apocalypse in slow motion, which means shelves do not empty all at once. They lean. Trucks line up at a distribution center that hasn't had a full night without power, and then they leave empty because the rollers burned up and the crew won't risk the loading dock while the rain glows. Grocery coolers throw out milk. That hurts, but it also helps because the smell keeps people honest about what they can and cannot eat. Gas pumps work where a generator coughs strong enough, and there are lines in the early morning when the storm belt pulls east for a few hours and the air feels thin, like a held breath. Then the belt swings back and everyone scatters. If you are new to this pattern, start marking down the hours when the hum in your teeth eases. That is your window. Use it to move, to trade, to check on the old woman 2 doors down who used to wave when you left for work, to share news without wires. You will not get an official schedule of the sky. You will build one in chalk and pencil, on the inside of a cupboard or on the garage wall. People ask, how do we organize when we can't meet in big rooms and plan? You organize at the kitchen table with whoever you live with. You organize across the hall by leaving a note in plastic with a dry piece of chalk inside. You write big block letters that a neighbor can read through rain. Water, okay. Need ice, baby sleeping. Check in at 2. Dog alerts to hum. Stay back if sky sings. You pick a stairwell, a corner under a bridge, a church kitchen, and you decide it is a post office at 2 fixed times a day, 9 and 4. You go then and only then. You make the gatherings short and spaced. You say names. You count. You post who needs insulin, who has a generator, and will let a neighbor charge a single radio for 15 minutes, who has a drill, and who has a calm voice. I have seen disasters. The parts that go worst are not the parts with the least stuff. They are the parts with the least agreement. Make small, sturdy agreements. We will check on Mr. R in 4, B at 9. We will boil water at noon if the hum is gone. We will share the 5-gallon can 2 doors down and replace it when we can. We will keep a bucket by every metal door and fill it with sand, and we will stand on that sand when we must touch what shocks us. If you need proof that we still build, I have it. Yesterday afternoon, while the belt shifted east and the air settled, I walked up the basement stairs and looked out a narrow window at the alley behind the studio. 4 people in rain ponchos stood around a car with its hood open. They had wrapped the hood latch in a towel and used a wooden broom handle to prop it up. One held a metal whisk, yes, a kitchen whisk, tied to a rope that led to a fence. The whisk was the little lightning rod, a point for the static to kiss before it could jump to hands. They touched the battery only after letting the whisk crackle, and I watched a blue tongue flick past the whisk tip 5 times in 30 seconds. They laughed every time like they'd survived a dare. Then they changed the battery and drove that car to pick up a woman on oxygen half a mile away. They used what they had. If you're listening in an apartment with a few rooms and fewer tools, know this: tools are not always steel. Tools are ideas you can pull off a shelf and give to your neighbor. A whisk on a rope, a board under your feet, a wet towel thrown over a metal door handle before you touch it, a folded rug between you and a fridge when you nudge it back into place. Good rubber boots are gold. If you own 2, lend one to a person who owns none. That single act might keep a hand from seizing and a breath from stopping. And when someone says, "That sounds silly," remind them that silly is often the shape of smart at first. People want to know if the government is coming. The answer is yes, and also not the way you picture. There are crews out there who do not sleep much and who strip down equipment to the bones and make it run on a prayer. There are water tankers moving on streets that still hold. There are National Guard soldiers at the fairgrounds by Gate 6, trading MRES for stories so they learn which blocks burn too bright and which are calm in the mornings. There are messages riding along shortwave from Kansas and Arkansas and Texas, and they say the belt is not a single wall, but a series of rooms moving through the middle of the country, and each room has its own bad habit. In Wichita, the habit is sheet lightning that never touches down, but still burns circuits. In Dallas, the habit is ground strikes that ride sprinkler lines into homes, putting a bite into faucets and turning basements into mild traps until someone cuts the main. In Little Rock, the habit is the sky going so green, you think of hail. But the hail never comes. Instead, there is that steady glow and the feeling that metal is sweating. Some of you are hearing whispers about pulses, about weapons, about hands we cannot see. I do not have evidence to share beyond what I have seen, a sky working according to a rule we hadn't written down yet. I know this: storms do not need us to be haunted to be deadly. They do not need a name beyond what we give them. We call this belt a belt because it holds us. We call this time a season because it refuses to leave. Now the simple talk, the kind that saves lives. If you can find a piece of heavy wood or rubber to stand on when you cook, do that. Keep a metal sink dry when the hum rises. Let dishes wait. Boil water when the belt moves off. Use a lid to conserve fuel. If you have a grill, move it under a dry overhang where no arc can jump to you or to the tank. If you hear the tiny tick when you reach for a doorknob, pause. Use a wooden spoon. It is better to sleep in one room with the door open than to reach for that knob in the dark when the sky is walking. Put a strip of tape over phone and laptop ports so your hands don't find them by habit. Put a dry towel over the microwave and leave it unplugged. It wants to act like a little radio when the field climbs. If you can, fill a bathtub with water when the calm comes. But do not stand in that tub when lightning walks outside. Mark your own safe spots with chalk. Teach a child to test a metal surface with the back of the hand, close, but not touching. Never grip first. Keep a whistle. It uses less breath than a shout when the air is wet and heavy. If you need to move at night and the sky is singing, slide your feet and keep your hands at your sides. That way, if a static lick comes, it takes your shoes first, not your heart. If you have a pacemaker or any implanted device, Call out when you enter a room so others know to make a path and help you avoid touching what hums. If you have a car that still runs, you own a shelter. Rubber tires are not magic, but the shell and frame can give you a Faraday hug. Just make sure your body is not bridging between metal parts and the ground. Keep your hands in your lap, not on the door or window. Wait out the worst in there. Windows cracked only enough to keep you breathing, and the glass from fogging. I want to talk about fear, because it's here with us, like another person in the room, and if we pretend it isn't, it will run the room. The fear right now has a shape, the fear of touching anything, of doing anything. It will tell you to sit and wait for someone to put you back in the normal world. But remember this, the world does not go back, it goes forward. In every storm and after every fire, people go forward and make the new normal with their hands. Today, I saw a man with a burned rope and a caramelized whisk hold the rope for someone else with patience and a joke that landed. And that joke was the fuse that kept the fear from burning the moment down. You can be that person for someone near you. You do not need a title. You need to announce the obvious in a steady voice. That's a wet rail. That's a dry board. We stand here. We move one at a time. We wait for the hum to drop. We go now. As for me, this voice, this frequency, this room, I am tired. I've slept in bursts between thunderbeats, if sleep is the word for lying still and breathing while the air shakes. I think of the nights I stood in a studio with bright lights and a countdown in my ear, and glossy graphics under my hands. And I think of the way the world felt stable even when the news was not. Now the only countdown is the red LED on the fuel monitor and the growing list of names in a folder, people who scrawled on scraps and slid them under a door on the back alley. Grandma in 3E needs her meds. Our basement shocks us. We have extra tarps. Baby arrived last night, boy. We named him Rain, no joke. I look at those notes, and I feel the pull to leave this chair and this mic and go do the work out there with my hands. I will, when the window opens, in the morning if the belt moves east again. Tonight, my hands are this voice and this wire. I will keep it steady if I can. You who are listening, who have lost power, who miss the hum of a fridge and the blue glow of a TV at night, who are worried the world slipped a gear it can't find again, hear this. We've lived through seasons that felt endless. Ice that wouldn't break, heat that pressed and didn't lift, water that rose and rose. The thing that makes the end feel close is not the storm itself. It's the silence that follows when we feel alone in it. That is why I'm talking to you now. This is not silence. This is a lifeline, faint but real. Put it in your pocket. Share it in words to a neighbor when the belt shifts and the air goes thin. Tell them there's a voice on 102.4, a man in a basement with a can of diesel and a stubborn transmitter, a man who will tell the truth, even when the truth is, we don't know everything yet. Tell them the tips that matter most. Spread out when the hum rises. Stand on dry. Use wood to touch metal. Boil when the calm comes. Write big block letters and set the times. Tell them to write back with chalk on a brick wall by the old bus stop on NE 23rd, 2 times a day, 9 and 4, because that's where we'll post the news until the towers come back to life. And if they don't, we'll build something that doesn't need them. I'm going to hold this frequency for another hour before we cut to conserve fuel. If the storm pulls back at dawn, I'll go upstairs and post a paper update with all the streets we know are passable, the clinics that are open, and the addresses of water pickups that won't shock you if you keep your feet dry. If you're in a high-rise, stay off the balconies when the sky walks. We've had arcs leap from the rail to the face, and leave burns that hurt worse in the second hour than in the first. If you're in a house with a tin roof, the roof will sing before it bites. Heed the song. If you have no roof left, find a car that still starts. Sit still and let the frame take the kiss. There will be a morning after this night. I can't tell you which morning will be the first quiet one, the one where the hum leaves your bones and the dog crawls out from under the bed and shakes like he won the lottery. But it will come, and between now and then, we will run lines that don't carry power, but do carry care. We will teach each other what wood feels like underfoot when the floor is wet and charged. We will wrap a whisk to a rope and laugh after the arc jumps, and then we will get Grandma her meds. We will choose the long patience of adoption, adopt a hallway, adopt a neighbor, adopt a small square of street, and keep it clear of lying wires and loose metal. We will ground each other by names. My name is Lester Holt. This is 102.4 FM. And you, wherever you are part of this circle not by choice, but by need, and by the simple fact that you're listening and planning your next hour with us. It's closing on midnight. The belt is thick again. The filling in my back left molar sings high, which means it's time to sit still. I'll be back on this frequency at 6 a.m. if the diesel holds and the line stays clean. If it doesn't, give me a half hour to wrench the transfer back with a bar and a cuss. Between now and then, boil if the hum falls, write in chalk, stand on dry, do not grip metal in the dark, keep little ones off bathtubs and away from sinks during the glow. Keep 1 cup of water for hope and 1 for work. Those who can pray, pray. Those who can fix, fix. Those who can talk, talk gently. I hear you in my head even if I can't hear you on this line, and I will carry your notes in this pocket until my shirt falls to threads. Dawn will come. We'll count the hours together. This is 102.4 FM. Hold fast. When you're ready, say the word next, and I'll tell you what the morning shows us. It's 6:04 a.m. now, and the light outside is no kind of comfort. The storm belt has dragged itself east for the moment, but it left the ground humming like a power line that hasn't figured out it's broken. You're still tuned to 102.4 FM, and this is Lester Holt speaking from the basement of our station east of the Oklahoma State Capitol. The diesel's still turning over, though I had to bleed the line twice before the engine quit coughing. I can see my breath in here, which tells me the furnace upstairs is finished, but the air is clearer than it was last night. If you've been awake all night, I know what you're feeling. The body runs out of adrenaline, and all that's left is a hollow that echoes with each rumble. Try to rest when you can. The storm is teaching us. It's not just the noise outside that kills. It's the exhaustion that makes you reach without thinking. At dawn, I stepped into the stairwell and opened the door 2 inches, just enough to smell the air and listen. The street is littered with branches like broken ribs. Every traffic light facing Lincoln Boulevard is dark and swung halfway around. The biggest change is the silence of engines. Cars are abandoned mid-lane, not smashed, not burned, just left there when the arcs walked through their wires. A police cruiser is parked crosswise at the intersection, its hood charred and its windows fogged from inside. I saw a man walking in the gutter with a metal rake slung over his shoulder, wooden handle held out in front of him like a divining rod. He stopped every dozen steps, touched the rake tip to the asphalt, waited for a crackle, then stepped wide around the spot. That's how people are moving now, testing, listening, respecting the ground like it's alive. The hospitals are shadows of themselves. I picked up a relay from a nurse at St. Anthony's just 2 miles west. They've pushed patients down into the parking garage because the concrete dampens the arcs that crawl through the wiring above. They're running ventilators off car batteries, swapping them every 2 hours with cables they made from jumper leads. She said the hardest part isn't the machines. It's the people afraid to touch each other. They keep spacing the cots too far, and the nurses have to remind them, some work still needs hands close. Imagine trying to calm a child when every instinct tells you distance is safety. That's what they're living with under there. Food's another fight. The supply chain broke not with one crash, but with thousands of tiny refusals. Truckers who won't roll a rig through lightning that doesn't stop. Dock workers who saw arcs crawl down loading cranes and won't stand there again. Grocery stores with half their stock spoiled, and the other half guarded by men who didn't think they'd ever need to stand at a door with bats and flashlights. Yesterday evening, a corner store in Bricktown propped its doors open and handed out bread that had gone stale in the blackout. They could have hoarded it, sold it for fuel or water, but they knew it would mold in a day. A little girl took a loaf, tore it in half, and gave the other half to a stranger without speaking. That was the most human thing I saw all day. If you're listening, here's what I've learned from the survivors I met at dawn. Keep water in glass jars if you can. Plastic seems to draw the static more. Stack them low, not high, and wedge cloth between them so they don't rattle and spark. Don't let your phone lure you into thinking it's safe to power it up when the hum is in your teeth. A man in Del City lit his screen for 10 seconds, and the flash that came off his charger left 2 fingers blistered. Use a wind-up radio if you have one. If you have candles, set them on ceramic plates, not metal trays, and never near windows when the sky glows green. When the air smells like pennies, stand still. That's the charge looking for a path. People are beginning to talk about leaving the cities, about heading into hills or plains where the storm belt might break apart. I've heard the same voices for years say, "It can't happen here," and then say, "We'll ride it out." Now they whisper about moving, but moving in this weather is its own gamble. Rural roads have steel culverts that hum with each strike, and the fields out there are flat as a skillet. I don't have a clean answer for you. If you're alone, find at least one other before you try. If you're in numbers, weigh the safety of walls against the risk of arcs crawling through the pipes inside them. Both paths cut. For me, the hardest part this morning was seeing how the world pretends at normal while we all know it isn't. The sun came up. The pigeons flew off a ledge and circled like they always do. Somewhere a dog barked at nothing. And yet the air isn't air anymore. It's something waiting to strike. If you're like me, you feel it in your bones, like the storm is inside us now, not just overhead. I don't know where this ends, but I do know this. We don't end here, not like this, not in silence and fear. We make new rules, and we pass them along, and we hold steady until the belt breaks or shifts or fades. It has to. No storm lasts forever, no matter how endless it feels. This is Lester Holt, 102.4 FM, still with you. I'll keep this line alive as long as the diesel runs and as long as the tower stands. If you can hear me, you're still alive, and that means the storm hasn't won. I'll check back at midday if the hum eases. Until then, spread out when the sky sings. Touch with wood before metal, and remember, the morning came today, and it will come again. It's just past noon now, 12:18 by the clock that still ticks on the studio wall. The second hand drags, but it hasn't quit yet, and that's more than I can say for half the city's clocks. This is Lester Holt on 102.4 FM, and if you can hear me through the hiss, and the storm hasn't erased everything we are. Outside the basement window, the light is bruised yellow, the kind you get before tornadoes, but this isn't a funnel threat. The clouds aren't rotating. They're hanging, stacked in layers that look heavy enough to crush a roof. The air presses down, and you can feel the weight in your chest, even when you're just sitting still. Some of you will think that's fear, and maybe it is, but it's also the charge. The storm presses on lungs the way it presses on wires. You're not weak if you're short of breath right now. You're living in the same air I am. The city sounds like it's waiting. No horns, no engines, no kids running between sprinklers. Just the shuffle of boots on pavement when someone decides they need to move. And even that sound is clipped short, like people are afraid to walk too loud. I stepped out for 10 minutes to see what the neighborhood had become. Parked cars with hoods up, batteries missing, windows taped in X's, not for wind, but for arcs that crawl glass and find the aluminum frames. A man and his son carried buckets of water from a broken main, each step measured, their hands wrapped in rags so the metal handles wouldn't bite them. He looked at me as if to ask if it was safe, and I couldn't answer, because I don't know anymore what safe means in a storm that never leaves. Word came through a scratchy channel out of Tulsa that martial law is in place across 3 states now. Not the Hollywood version with tanks on every street corner. There aren't enough soldiers left standing steady for that. It's smaller. Curfews, roadblocks, armed patrols watching the fuel depots, trying to keep generators from turning into gold mines for gangs with nothing left to lose. A truck was hijacked south of Norman last night, carrying bottled water and dry rations. The convoy guards fired shots into the air, but the storm answered back with a crack of its own, and the bullets meant nothing in the noise. By the time the hum faded, the truck was gone. This is what happens when order bends. People push, and the storm makes sure no one pushes straight. The experts, I don't know if we should still call them that, have started saying things they never would have said on television. A voice on one shortwave band swore the storm field is self-sustaining now, that it's drawing not just from heat and dust, but from the grid itself, feeding on the last lines that still pulse with current. That might explain why blackouts aren't random. They're targeted, marching from substation to substation like the storm has a map. If that's true, then keeping something running isn't just survival, it's bait. Every live wire is a flare that draws the belt closer. That would explain why whole blocks go dark together, like dominoes tipping. It doesn't make the theory any less terrifying, but it makes sense in the cruel way nature often does. I want to tell you what people are doing to survive, because that's what matters more than theories. In the neighborhood north of the river, they've set up a barter line that runs twice a day at fixed hours, rain or not. People bring what they have, candles, rice, car batteries, tarps, and lay them out on folding tables under a concrete overpass. No shouting, no haggling, just nods and quick trades. They keep the line moving, because standing still in the open too long makes everyone nervous. At the end, they write chalk notes on the pillars. Need salt, have beans, bring dry wood. By the next meeting, someone answers. It's not perfect, but it's working. The storm hasn't killed our ability to organize. It's only made it sharper. There are stories too. Hard ones. At Mercy Hospital's temporary ward, 3 patients on dialysis died when the backup pumps failed. The nurses did everything they could, carrying buckets, hand-cranking old machines, but the arcs found the wiring, and the machines went quiet. Those families are grieving right now in a garage lit by lanterns, and they deserve our silence for a moment. Loss is part of this storm too, and pretending otherwise is cruelty. If you're carrying grief today, know that you're not alone. Every block has someone lighting a candle, not just for light, but for memory. Here's what I need you to remember if you hear nothing else from me today. Distance is safety. Patience is survival. Do not rush to touch what hums. Do not gather tight under one roof unless you must. Spread out, wait the storm's rhythm, and trade only when the air lightens. Water is life, but metal handles are killers now. Wrap them. Insulation doesn't need to be fancy. It can be cloth, wood, even cardboard. Make barriers. Think before every reach. It's 12:36 now, and the diesel drum shows just under half. That's fuel for maybe another 12 hours if I ration. I'll keep this frequency alive as long as I can, because a voice in the dark is sometimes the only proof we're still here. This is Lester Holt, 102.4 FM. I'll come back on air at sundown if the line holds. Until then, breathe steady, keep your distance, and remember that storms don't last forever, even when they pretend to. It's 7:41 in the evening now, and the sky over Oklahoma City is the color of bruised iron. You're tuned to 102.4 FM, and this is Lester Holt, still here in the basement of the old station. The diesel's burning low, but the line is steady, and the hum outside has taken on that hollow sound, the one that makes every hair on your arm lift before the next flash. I haven't been above ground in hours, but I can hear it through the concrete. Thunder that doesn't roll so much as grind, like steel beams dragged across a warehouse floor. If you're anywhere near an open field, get low and stay low. The arcs are crawling across the flat ground now, leaping from fence to fence, and they don't care if you're metal or flesh. I heard something today I wish I hadn't. A group of families tried to head west toward El Reno, thinking the belt might be weaker on the plains. They made it 8 miles before a strike walked the line of cars they were in. Not a single bolt, not a random hit, but a crawl, a chain, moving across every hood and roof like fingers tapping. Engines died, radios fried, and when they tried to walk, the ditches lit up under their feet. Some made it back, some didn't. The lesson is sharp. The storm chooses the flat and the open. If you think escape means horizon, it doesn't. It means cover. It means concrete. It means walls that can take the hum without passing it on. Hospitals are holding on by threads. I got a whisper from a medic working the fairgrounds shelter. They've set up cots in the livestock barn because the steel beams overhead act like a cage, drawing the charge upward. He said the irony is that animals are safer now than people because stalls are wood and straw and don't conduct as fast. He's treating burns, small and large, and the worst are not from strikes, but from touches. Someone brushing a wet railing, someone grabbing a pan without thinking, someone leaning against a lamppost when the hum rose. He said what matters most is slowing people down. The storm punishes impulse. The government channels are fewer by the hour. The last clear one I caught was out of Fort Sill, and the voice was tired enough that I believed it. They said the belt has stabilized into 3 corridors, one through Oklahoma, one cutting across Missouri, and one dragging down into East Texas. They're calling it sustained electrical activity, but the truth is in the silence behind the words. They don't have control. Power grids are being shut down on purpose now, not just because of failure, but because every live circuit is food for this storm. Imagine that. We're starving the wires to starve the sky. I walked up earlier to the alley to breathe air that wasn't filtered through dust and diesel. The light outside was dim but sharp, and the rain fell in curtains you could almost see through. On the brick wall, someone had written in chalk, "We are still here." Underneath it, a list of what they had: candles, rice, baby clothes. That's what we are now. Not a city of glowing towers, not a hub of highways, just chalk on a wall and the will to share what we can't use alone. It looked fragile, but it also looked like hope. Here's your reminder for the night. Boil water when the hum drops, not during. Use wood to touch metal. Keep shoes on, even in bed, because arcs crawl floors. Spread out when you sleep. I know it feels wrong, but closeness draws strikes. If you have batteries, guard them like treasure. If you have candles, shield the flame with glass or ceramic, never metal. And if you have nothing else, write in chalk where others can see. That's enough to say you're alive. It's 7:59 now, and the hum is rising again. I'll keep this line alive through the night if I can, but if it cuts, give me half an hour to bring the diesel back online. This is Lester Holt on 102.4 FM. You're not alone. The storm hasn't taken everything. Not yet. It's 2:13 in the morning, and the storm hasn't let up once. You're still with me on 102.4 FM. This is Lester Holt speaking from a concrete basement that feels smaller every hour the thunder presses overhead. The hum is so constant now it's like a second heartbeat in my skull. I know some of you are awake because you can't sleep when the air vibrates like this. Don't blame yourself. No one sleeps easy when the walls seem to breathe with electricity. Outside the window slit, the city has turned into a ghost. The rain doesn't fall in drops anymore. It falls in threads, thin silver lines that glow whenever the sky flickers. I saw a power pole collapse an hour ago. Not from wind, not from lightning, but from the inside out, as if the wood had been eaten hollow. It smoldered, then split in two. The wires swung low, and blue fire crawled along them until it found the wet pavement. Everything nearby went dark, and for a moment, the street looked like it had been erased from the map. Reports are coming in. Scattered, broken, but enough to piece together a pattern. Entire neighborhoods are cutting themselves off from the grid on purpose. They're pulling main breakers, ripping fuses, yanking wires out with gloves and boards, because they've learned what I've been hearing too. The storm feeds on power. Every live circuit is bait, and the longer it stays connected, the harder the arcs hit. One man from Shawnee told me he killed his own house, pulled the line, smashed the breaker box, and sat in candlelight with his family. The next belt of thunder rolled through and jumped every house on his street but his. He swears that's why they're still breathing. Maybe he's right. Maybe darkness is safer than a single flicker of light. But darkness has its own dangers. Desperation breeds in it. A grocery on the south side was broken into tonight, not by people looking for food, but for batteries. Batteries, of all things. They're the new currency. Flashlight packs, car batteries, even hearing aid cells. I heard a woman crying outside after the looters left, her lantern shattered, her last light gone. She said she'd rather have lost bread than the little glow that kept her boy calm through the storm. That's how survival is measured now, not in meals or miles, but in how long you can keep one small light alive without drawing the storm's attention. The government's voice is fading. No more polished updates, no more scripted calm. The last thing I caught on shortwave was raw and shaky, a soldier in Missouri begging civilians to stop moving on highways. He said the storm follows the flow of engines like a hound on a scent. He said convoys draw arcs, the metal frames pulling lightning sideways, wiping out entire lines of vehicles. I don't know if that's true everywhere, but I believe his voice. It broke halfway through, the kind of break that comes when you've seen something you can't describe in words. I keep thinking about what this storm has taken from us. Not just lights, not just phones, not just the hum of machines we thought were permanent. It's taken trust. Trust in walls, trust in distance, trust in our own instincts. We used to run toward shelter when lightning struck. Now sometimes the shelter hums louder than the sky. We used to huddle close for warmth. Now we sleep with space between us, so the charge doesn't leap body to body. It feels cruel, unnatural, but it's the only way through. And yet, there's still proof we're not broken. Earlier, I saw a man on the next block stringing lines between two buildings, but not for power. He tied white sheets soaked in salt water and let them hang like flags. When the arcs crawled near, they snapped at the sheets first, harmless, burning the cloth instead of the walls. He stood there smiling like he'd won a game of chess against the sky. Maybe he did. Maybe that's what this is now. Moves and countermoves, us finding little tricks the storm doesn't expect. If you're listening, remember this for tonight. Darkness isn't the enemy, it's a shield. Pull your breakers if you can. Wrap your handles. Space yourselves out. Let the storm waste its strength on the empty, not on you. And if you find a way to make it bend, even for a moment, share it. Chalk it on a wall, whisper it to a neighbor, pass it along in the barter lines. Every trick is a lifeline now. It's 2:38 a.m., and the hum hasn't eased. I'll stay on this frequency as long as the diesel holds, and if I go silent, give me 30 minutes. I'll fight the switch back up and return. This is Lester Holt, 102.4 FM. You're not alone in this night. We're still breathing under the storm. It's 8:22 in the morning now, and for the first time in days, the light coming through the basement window doesn't feel like it wants to kill me. You're still on 102.4 FM, and I'm still Lester Holt, scratching this voice against the silence so you know you're not the only one left counting the hours. The storm hasn't gone. It never really leaves. But it's thinned for the moment. The thunder is farther off, rolling slow, like a train you can hear but not see. The hum in my teeth has faded to a whisper, which means if you've been waiting for a chance to move, now is the time. I went above ground just after 6, careful, slow, listening with my bones before I stepped. The streets are coated in a wet ash, not fire ash, but something left behind by the arcs. Every surface looks dusted with silver powder, slick when it rains, sticky when it dries. People were already outside. A woman dragged a garden hose across her lawn, filling pots and pans because the taps inside had gone bitter. A boy carried a car battery in both arms like it was gold, because in a way it is now. On the corner, 3 neighbors were prying open the side door of a diner, not to steal, but to check the pantry for food they could share. They looked at me, and I looked at them, and we didn't speak. Words are heavy when the sky can hear them. The hospitals keep sending signals, but they're thinner every day. St. Anthony's relay came through at dawn, saying they'd lost their last working ventilator when a surge crawled the wires, even after the generator was cut. They're hand pumping for patients now, volunteers taking shifts until their arms shake. Can you imagine that? Hours of squeezing a plastic bag just to keep one set of lungs working. That's what survival looks like here. Hands cramping, backs bent, hope tied to muscle. Mercy hasn't spoken in 2 days, and I don't know if that means silence or worse. The official channels are worse than useless. A recorded message plays on loop if you tune to 1640 AM, telling you to seek shelter, avoid water, unplug devices. It repeats like a prayer no one believes in anymore. Last night, I caught something raw on a ham frequency. Two men in Missouri talking about fields glowing at night, whole acres lit like someone laid neon under the soil. They said the ground itself is alive with charge now, that farmers can't even touch their fences without sparks snapping their teeth. One of them swore he saw cattle fall dead where they stood, not burned, just dropped, like the ground pulled the life out of them. People here are learning new habits fast. I saw a family moving this morning, pushing a cart with tarps and blankets. The father carried a long wooden pole wrapped in rubber at one end. Every few steps, he touched the ground in front of them before anyone else moved. It looked strange, but it was smart. Others are hanging wet sheets soaked in salt along fences, a trick I mentioned last night. The storm bites at the cloth first, and the walls behind stay untouched. Old tricks, new uses. That's how we live now. Food is running thinner than power. The corner store shelves are bare, the trucks aren't rolling, and what's left spoils quick in the heat. But last night, I saw people trade a bag of beans for a jug of lamp oil, and no one raised a voice. That's a miracle in its own way. The storm may have broken our wires, but it hasn't broken the part of us that knows survival means together. Chalk on the walls proves it. Messages like, "We have water, share salt, check back at 2." Little notes of defiance written big enough for anyone to see. So here's your guide for today. Move when the hum fades. Boil water before the next belt rolls back. Trade only in daylight, and leave chalk messages wherever you pass. Guard your batteries, but guard each other more. The storm is patient, but so are we. We've outlasted nights before, and we'll outlast this too. It's 8:39 now, and the air is thickening again. I'll cut back to conserve diesel, but I'll return before dusk. Until then, breathe steady, move with care, and remember, you're not alone in this. This is Lester Holt, 102.4 FM, holding the line until the sky breaks. It's 6:12 in the evening, and the whole city feels like it's been holding its breath. This is Lester Holt on 102.4 FM, still in the basement east of the Capitol, still watching the diesel needle crawl lower every hour. The storm belt came back just after 3, and it came back angry. The thunder didn't roll this time. It cracked, sharp, one after another, like a rifle firing above our heads. The rain wasn't rain anymore. It was sheets, solid walls slamming against windows, heavy enough to bend the frames. And the glow. God, the glow was everywhere. It crawled telephone wires, danced on the gutters, shimmered across puddles like oil slicks lit from below. I heard screaming from down the block when it hit hardest. A family had tried to start a generator in their garage, thinking the roof would shield it. What they didn't count on was the arcs crawling through the vent pipe. The current found the frame, ran straight into the machine, and blew it apart. No fire, just a burst of light and silence after. The father came out carrying his boy, the smell of burned plastic clinging to them both. The boy was breathing, but his hands twitched like they'd been plugged into a socket. That's the danger now. Not just the sky, but every path the sky can take to reach us. The hospitals, what's left of them, sent word this afternoon. They're no longer admitting anyone they can't treat with hands and cloth alone. Machines are failing faster than people can replace them. Mercy is gone. St. Anthony's is rationing care. They're writing names on scraps of paper and pinning them to shirts because the electronic records are fried. I heard one nurse's voice crack when she said, "We're back to paper and pens, and even the pens spark if you grip too tight." Imagine that. Even ink doesn't feel safe anymore. The government? Nothing useful. The only broadcast I caught from Washington was a stale loop telling people to shelter indoors. Indoors is where the arcs crawl most. People know better now. They're moving into concrete garages, old storm shelters, basements like this one, anywhere the charge can't crawl so easy. The fairgrounds shelter is still open, but space is tight, and the guards have orders to turn people away once the barn fills. That's going to break hearts tonight. I walked up at sunset, against my better judgment, just to see how the city was wearing the storm. The streets are littered with blackened branches, bent signs, and the shells of cars abandoned mid-turn. But here's what I also saw. A circle of neighbors gathered under a bridge, passing around bread like communion. No shouts, no fights, just quiet sharing while the thunder cracked overhead. I saw chalk on a brick wall. Still here. Still human. That's what we are clinging to. Not wires, not signals, not screens, but words scrawled in chalk to remind us that we're more than what the storm is trying to erase. Here's what matters tonight. Don't run generators in garages. Don't touch pipes when the glow comes back. Don't huddle too close. The arcs like groups. Boil water when the hum drops. Share it when you can. And trade only in daylight. If you have batteries, use them sparingly. If you have candles, set them in glass or ceramic, never on metal. And if you have nothing else, write in chalk. Leave a mark that says you're alive. It's 6:34 now, and the sky outside is rumbling low again. I'll keep the line open until the diesel coughs its last, but if I cut, wait 30 minutes and I'll wrench it back to life. This is Lester Holt, 102.4 FM. The storm hasn't broken us yet, and as long as I have this mic, it won't take our voices. It's 1:27 in the morning, and the storm feels heavier than ever. You're tuned to 102.4 FM, and I'm Lester Holt, still in this basement that smells of diesel and damp concrete. The hum is back, stronger than last night, and the thunder isn't even thunder anymore. It's a grind, long and metallic, like a train dragging chains across the sky. If you're awake right now, I know why. No one sleeps when the walls shake with every flash. The city above is different tonight. I went up just after midnight when the rain eased for a few minutes. The streets weren't empty. People were out, moving in silence, heads down, carrying bundles on their backs. Families, couples, even small groups, all headed west, away from downtown. They weren't talking, just walking, and the glow from the storm made them look like shadows. I called out to one man, asked him where they thought they were going. He just pointed at the sky and kept walking. That's what it is now. People moving not toward safety, but away from fear, even if there's nothing solid waiting for them on the other side. I saw something else, something worse. A substation east of here caught fire, not from lightning striking it, but from the arcs crawling down the lines like snakes. The flames were green, not orange, licking up through the rain like the storm itself was feeding on the wires. The whole neighborhood went black, and then quiet, so quiet I thought the city had died. But then, out of that silence, I heard voices singing. Faint, broken, but singing. A hymn, maybe. A handful of people standing in the dark, choosing to answer the storm with song. That sound carried farther than the thunder, at least for me. The official channels are useless now. Washington hasn't spoken in almost 24 hours. The only clear voice I caught tonight was out of Kansas, a farmer speaking on shortwave. He said the fields out there glow at night like they're alive. He said cattle won't go near the water troughs because arcs snap across the rims. He said his wife won't let the kids touch the barn doors anymore, Not after one of them lit up blue and burned her hand black. His voice shook, but he kept talking, because that's what we do when silence is worse. Here's what I've learned tonight. Cut yourself off. Don't wait for the storm to trip your wires, pull your breakers, smash your switches, sit in the dark on purpose. Darkness is safer now than light. If you have candles, shield them in glass. If you have batteries, guard them like treasure. If you have water, keep it in glass jars low to the ground. And if you have nothing else, keep distance. Don't sleep close together. Don't huddle when the thunder grinds. And don't touch metal with bare hands. It's 1:52 now, and the hum is so thick my teeth ache. I'll hold this line as long as the diesel runs, but if I cut out, wait half an hour, and I'll be back. This is Lester Holt, 102.4 FM, still alive, still speaking, still refusing to let the storm take everything from us.